So they run into a couple of his fans on the street, these two kind of unimpressive looking guys who are huge fans of Justin Waller, and he points at these two guys, and it's like this unintentionally funny moment where he's like, no one's going to be flying these two guys out anywhere, no one's going to be taking these two on a yacht, and then the camera like zooms in on them, and they're like kind of nodding and like agreeing with their own momentary humiliation. They're like, yeah, no one's gonna hang out with us.
Welcome back. This is the Open Therapy Institute podcast. I'm Megan Daum. I can't decide how to pronounce my name. Maybe we could. That's actually
okay. Thank God, because sometimes I mispronounce. I don't know if I'm okay. So if even you, then okay.
No, I have discussed this. I have written about it, and this might be a good topic for another time to psychoanalyze my relationship to my last name, which is tortured, bordering on abusive. So anyway, I am Megan Daum or Dom, up to you. I'm here with Rob Henderson and Andrew Hartz, who have easy name privilege. Both of you. I'm very envious. And, there was one, I always say this, if there's not one thing, but one thing I would really redo if I could go back is just change my name, just change my last name for professional reasons.
You can.
What would you change it to?
It's too late now because I'm so.
What would you?
I'm so well known. It would just like mess everybody up. Just something normal, like a normal family name. Like I could have used like Brooks as a family name. I could have just
used a normal family name.
That's another name in the family that's just more Anglican and normal.
Okay.
Not this
Daum
horrible German, multiple
wildly
vowels.
Exotic. Daum.
Yeah.
It's like, where is she from? What's the origin of that?
Yeah, it's German. It's German. But okay. Well, we've got a lot to talk about today. As people know, this is the official podcast of the Open Therapy Institute. We talk about psychology, social psychology, psychoanalysis, what's going on in people's minds, often our own minds, our dreams, often have dream analysis. I dream of the Manosphere every night, so I don't know about you guys. We're going to talk about, among other things, this new documentary, this Louis Theroux. Now, he's got an interesting name in terms of pronunciation, Thoreau or Theroux. I believe his cousin Justin Theroux pronounces it Thoreau, but he's Theroux.
They're related.
They're cousins, and yes, and Louis Theroux's father is Paul Theroux, the famous writer. So I believe it's Theroux. Anyway, Louis Theroux, BBC documentarian, fairly well known and beloved in some circles figure, has made a new documentary about the Manosphere, and it's something that many people in our circle are very well versed in. So I would be curious to hear what you guys made of this documentary. Actually, before we talk about it, Rob, how do you define the Manosphere?
Oh, well, I wrote a recent piece in the Wall Street Journal discussing that Netflix documentary, Inside the Manosphere. And my understanding is that it's this eclectic kind of group of podcasters, live streamers, YouTubers, online influencers, online pranksters who, there's a lot of differences, I think, within the Manosphere. It's this umbrella category, but they generally have kind of these provocative, often offensive thoughts about women and relationships and a man's place in society and how they need to see through what they call the matrix. There's sort of the red pill contingent of the Manosphere who you've been fed this blue pill, these lies about society all your life, but then we're offering you the truth about how women really think, how relationships really work, how to make money, how to become successful, and to break free of all of these lies you've been told. There's also this other contingent, MGTOW, I think it's pronounced,
really
men going
catchy.
their own way.
That was my other last name, actually, for a while. I was going to be Megan
MGTOW. All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's write that one down.
That's my married name. I was going to didn't take that name when I got married.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I mean, you dream about the Manosphere, so it's all coming together. MGTOW is the last name.
What does that
And so
stand
these
for? What does
guys,
MGTOW stand for?
men going their own way.
Yes.
And my understanding is this group is almost the opposite of some of the, I guess, like the red pill pickup artist guys. So those guys are like, here, we'll teach you how to become irresistible to women. And then the MGTOW guys say like, oh, we know all the same things about women that the red pill guys know, but we've just decided to give up and withdraw from relationships and from society. They're not worth it anymore. Marriage is a scam to get, women want to manipulate you out of your money. So we're just going to leave relationships and women altogether. And then there are other guys who don't really seem to talk that much about women at all. And they're more so just about, lifting weights and making money and drinking protein powders and, selling their followers on crypto scams and more interested in lining their own pockets.
Right. Okay, that's a very, very concise breakdown. Is it fair to say that the MGTOW guys, they especially don't like Western women? I feel like sometimes they are into sort of like, going to Thailand and finding a bride over there. But maybe that's even exhausted itself. I don't know. Maybe they've sworn off
Well, there's
women all
this
over
idea
the
of like
world.
the passport bros, right? They call them the passport bros. And these are, Western guys who get a passport and travel to developing countries to find a wife that hasn't been corrupted by Western society. And, they know how to be, sort of conventionally submissive and listen to their husbands and that kind of thing. It's some of the, if you go into those corners of X and social media, it gets kind of weird and gross. But yeah, those guys exist too. Yeah, so that's a good point. That it's not women as a whole. It's like Western women that they're criticizing and try to avoid.
I mean, it's definitely women as a whole. I think there is a component of it that they particularly hate Western women, but then they might just graduate into hating not wanting anything to do with any woman at all. So yeah, this happens incrementally. All right. I'm Andrew. What did you know about the Manosphere before you saw this documentary? What was your relationship to this particular subculture?
I first learned that term "red pill" from this documentary by Cassie J. Do you remember that movie?
Yes, that's a great documentary, actually.
It was pretty good, yeah. And it's a woman writing about men's issues in a fairly balanced, compassionate way. And it's interesting to see the way that the red pill that term "red pill" was used in that movie, which I want to say was 2016, or it was a while ago.
It was a really while ago. And Cassie J is such an interesting case because she was like an actress. I mean, she did not have a background as a filmmaker or even a political or person who was interested in these issues. She set out to make a very basic normie men are sexist kind of film because she had been kind of like an extra in horror movies and playing the girl that gets killed in the first scene and kind of thing. She's a very pretty blonde actress type. And she, in the course of making this documentary, she just got a deeper understanding of all of these issues and developed some real empathy for these guys. And she made the documentary and then was promptly canceled, of course. And we have not heard from her since. So.
Oh, really? She was totally canceled from that.
I think so, because I was actually looking into her. I can't remember if I was actually in touch with her, but I remember thinking about her as a potential guest at one point. Or just I knew about her. But anyway, yes, the red pill, that is the name of her film. But the red pill, of course, refers to this concept in the Matrix that if you take the blue pill, you will go on with life as you've always known it and nothing will change. If you take the red pill, it will shake up everything you realize everything you've ever assumed to be true is not true and all this. So
it was through that movie that I learned about MGTOW and I learned about, but this was, almost 10 years ago. And then I don't think I've stayed so in touch with there's all of these podcasters. I don't know how people find all this stuff. The algorithm sends certain things to me and not other things. And I don't know why, but these people have huge followings and I really had never seen some of them on the Thoreau documentary at all. I'm super interested in men's issues and have been for a long time. So that's interesting to me. I had a weird association that I started thinking about a lot was what I was into when I was in middle school, and like a little bit maybe, but like I was super into gangster rap when I was like in middle school. So like I remember like NWA, Too Short, these kind of like and they were doing the same thing that these podcasters are doing. Like it was so like Eazy-E was straight up rapping about beating women and sexually assaulting women and selling drugs and stealing cars, and it was like there's, and I wondered how far does this go back in terms of like immature like middle school boys are really into repulsive stuff. And like it's like and is this different, or is this the same thing? I loved the Man Show, Jimmy Kimmel's old show with
Adam
Carolla. I mean, me and my middle school friends loved that show, which was all about sexism jokes. Like it was just
but it was winking at it. The Man Show was kind of winking at that stuff. It kind of played it both ways, right? Because it definitely embraced it, and it had the girls jumping on trampolines like every time, every commercial break in and out of it was the girls on the trampolines. I mean, it was fairly grotesque, but they were also making fun of the genre.
It was like a charming tongue-in-cheek quality about it. Like Jimmy and Adam were often, when they do their skits, they were often the butt of the joke. You know, like you'd see girls laughing at them or mocking them or whatever. Like they kind of were in on it. They knew that it was supposed to be satire, but I watched it
was
too.
A little bit both. I mean, I remember Dave Chappelle, and maybe this was with the Man Show, but he went out into New York and was like commenting on women's boobs. Have you people seen that skit?
No.
But it was like, and he was, I don't know, but there was a lot of that kind of like, it was shocking comedy. Tom Green, I don't know that he did a lot of sexism stuff, but he definitely did super offensive stuff. And so did Jackass wasn't just stunts. They would do lots of stuff. I mean, it started out with like these skater videos that my friends like. It was CK, what was it called? I want to say like CK95. There were these VHS skater tapes that people would watch, and they'd do tricks and they'd get injured, and that was part of it. But then they'd also like do like really illegal and cruel things sometimes. And but I don't know. I was just thinking about that world, and I was thinking, is this just the social media version of what we were doing in the 90s, or is this like different and worse somehow?
I think it's really great that you just laid out that history, because I think that what you're describing, was it 90s or was it actually like 2010, sort of like early 2010s raunch culture? Yeah. This was kind of like the Girls Gone Wild.
Girls Gone Wild. Snoop Dogg.
Raunch culture.
Snoop Dogg is a beloved national figure, and it's like how much of what he, like Girls Gone Wild is all about objectifying women. How much I think there's actual like rapes described in like Tupac songs. Kamala Harris loves Tupac. Like there's so much derogatory towards women's stuff in Tupac, and crime and all of the stuff that's in the Manosphere now was in Tupac.
Right. Well, and I just want to say really quickly, I think that you had that moment, right? So that kind of came, you had like the MTV Spring Break franchise, and you had Girls Gone Wild, and you had all that stuff. And I think that this third wave, very online millennial feminism, kind of Tumblr feminism, the beginning of this, social justice, green hair aesthetic, was a response to that.
Yes.
And so then that took over. And the Manosphere iteration that we have now is a reaction to the Tumblr feminism. And so these things just all play off of each other. So, I think that it is part of the same thing, but it's like a boomerang effect, right? So anyway, I don't know, Rob, do you have thoughts about that?
No, like I've had similar thoughts to Andrew. When I was a kid, it was like Exhibit, 50 Cent, Eminem, and I remember like parents freaking out about this music, but the boys loved it. That was the era of like burning CDs and sharing them with each other, or selling them in the schoolyard in middle school. And I think like one difference is that these guys still felt so far removed. Like seeing a rapper on MTV, like that's just a different category of human being. Like they're, Hollywood A-list, super famous. And the way that they're making money is they're producing an entertaining product. It's music, it's a CD, and then sometimes you'd see them interviewed and they'd drop their guard a little and say like, yeah, I did live that life and I don't think kids should be doing it, but it's reality and it's entertainment, and don't get it twisted. Like, I'm not saying little kids should be doing this stuff, but with social media and like the rise of the influencer, that boundary, I guess, has thinned out somewhat. And so now if you go on Instagram, like, you're scrolling and seeing your friends, but then you're also seeing your favorite influencer, and it all just feels like the same category of person. And the influencers are intentionally trying to make themselves more relatable by live streaming their day or driving or going out and just living their normal lives. And it feels like, I guess, less far removed. And maybe in that sense, like, kids are more likely to want to emulate it. And then also the product that they're selling. So I don't know, you're buying a CD, it's music, it's it's a product that's entertaining, and maybe it does influence your behavior somewhat. But then I just feel like it's more exploitative what the influencers are doing, because they're saying like, sign up for my like fake university where I'm going to teach you something that's probably not like going to actually teach you anything, or their fake subscription services, crypto scams, pay to join my Telegram channel and I'm going to advertise OnlyFans girls to you. And that, it just feels a little more predatory and exploitative than, I'm making a CD or a mixtape or something and selling it to you.
It's not art. It's commerce.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like art. That's right. Yeah,
it's not art, and it's like, but it is, it's interesting how much of it might be fake, too, and maybe it is art.
Yeah, exactly. Like, as defined.
It is
now.
like, these are like acts where then they, like in the Thoreau documentary, and it's like he goes to interact with his mom, and it's like, oh, you're not. Or his wife, and it's like, well, I don't actually have sex with other people. It was my wife. This is just what I tell people. And it's like, there was definitely some like performance art. It's like, but one thing that definitely switched, that I think might be why Netflix is making a critical documentary about this in a way that they might not have about gangster rap, is that it was left coded and now it's right coded. The political alignment of this kind of gross masculine stuff or whatever it's flipped on the political spectrum.
Yeah. Although I thought what was really notable was that this was not like, these guys were not all white. Like, is it Myron Gaines? Is he sort of the main? Is he one of the guys? Is that his name?
He's one of them.
So I don't know what I'm not quite sure what his ethnicity is, but he's.
His I think his parents are from Sudan, so he's Sudanese by ancestry.
Yeah. And then, Justin Waller was like a white guy from Louisiana, from a trailer, and then who was the HS Tiki Taki? I guess he was I guess he's a white.
Harrison Sullivan. He's half.
Oh, that's right, because his father was
white mother,
his father was black. His mother's white, because we meet her, right? And so his father's like a British footballer or something Anyway, I did like it that it got across that this is not some kind of like white supremacist, white nationalist movement, because I think a lot of normies make that assumption, and it's much more of a global thing. This is happening all over the world, and it was notable that, like, at least with the three main guys that they followed, they all had absent fathers. That was something that they shared. So I'm actually, and again, just really quickly, just to sort of build the foundation here, how familiar were you guys with the pickup artist movement? Because I think that was kind of the seeds of this. Like, this was the, Neil Strauss had written a couple of books about this. The Game, I think, was one of them, and there was there were a couple kind of big, sort of mid 2000s probably influencers, you would call them that, who were into like charging young men money to show them how to pick up women, but they would actually go out into the world and like, here's how you talk to a woman at a bar. This idea of negging, this? Have you tried that, Andrew? Does it work?
It totally works. Everybody
try
should
it with
do
me.
it.
You
I
both should
recommend
try it on me throughout this podcast. Yeah.
the thing, it's like another way where I can kind of see a lot of this stuff filling gaps that's needed is like young men do need guidance about how to talk to women.
Right.
They actually do need that.
Right.
And like, but there's a way of doing it where it's like, this is how to build an authentic connection with a person versus like neg them. And like, and then like talk about, flex or what, I don't know what they have them do, but like, but it's like these weird mind games that like, are not are it's kind of impossible to see that ever leading to a fulfilling relationship, frankly. So it's like, so I think like, but it's like like if you're lost and you're in middle school and you're immature and you need guidance, you're gonna look for a book, and that's gonna be at the top of the list. And but it's like they really actually like I mean I'll talk to I used to see a lot of teenage boys. I don't see kids in my private practice anymore, but it would be like you'd tell them things like how do you talk to a woman? It's like, well, you just like ask her what she's into, maybe you like get a slice of pizza together at some time, or like study together or something. And he's like, and I remember talking to one, he's like, oh, so it's kind of like making a friend. I was like, yeah.
Okay,
yeah, it's like making a friend, and then but then there's like another piece that like there's a romantic piece that can come out of it, but it's just like there's like basics that I feel like they need, and if nobody's telling them it's like making a friend, then they're like they think it's this weird other thing they don't know how to.
And with Me Too, they're very understandably trepidatious about approaching women in public because she could easily turn around and say you're invading my boundary or worse,
How often does that happen?
I mean, a lot of men. Well, Rob, maybe you can speak to this. I hear a lot of men say, "I'm just not even going to take the risk. I'm not going to walk up to somebody."
So I think there are a couple of things going. I think so, Andrew. I think your question, you're suggesting that it doesn't happen that often. I agree with you. I don't think it actually happens. Like I think life is all pretty normal. You approach people and they say no, thank you, and you move on, and that's like the typical interaction. But the social media algorithms reward crazy, sensational, outrageous videos, and so when you see, like I'm sure both of you have seen these videos of like some girl doing squats at the gym, and she's recording herself, and then she has like a little caption underneath, like, "Oh my God, some other creep just looked at me," and then boys are watching this and they're thinking like, "Oh, girls don't even want to be looked at in public. Like I'm just not going to like eyes forward, blinkers on, do not like make women think that I like them at all." And most women at the gym are probably either like indifferent or maybe even positively inclined if they're single to be approached. But the video that the men see, like they think that is how reality is, and they have this misinterpreted view. And the other thing is like a lot of guys I think will use that, like Me Too and these videos of women posting mean comments about men or something, as a justification for their own what the pickup artists call approach anxiety, of like they're already afraid of approaching women, and now they have this socially justifiable excuse of, oh, I don't want to be accused of harassment. Like, oh, I would approach her, bro. Like, I would totally go say, but like, I don't want to get Me Too'd. Like, I would totally go up to that girl, but like, do I want to get recorded? Is there a hidden camera? Like, she's probably going to post this on, so I'm just going to, but otherwise I would. That's like the story they're telling themselves, but that's not what they would do. They would be afraid regardless. And so I think there's just a lot of excuse making and fear. And then like, what I think happened with Me Too is like, a lot of guys, the average guy, I think, is afraid to talk to women, and they actually need more encouragement
for ego reasons. More than is that right? They're afraid for ego reasons as opposed
ego
to
in like the psychoanalytic sense, or like the kind of colloquial.
Oh no, yeah, I was thinking more colloquial. Like it's like the like self-esteem hit you get when somebody says they're not interested.
No, yeah, and it's painful, and most guys don't want to risk that. And they need some the average guy does, but there's like a percentage of guys who are predatory and are completely unbothered by rejection. And I think like Me Too was a reaction to those guys, that maybe 5 or 10% of guys who are psychopathic and predatory. But then the blanket advice for everyone was, you should never bother a woman in public, be careful how you interact, and so on. And probably the predatory guys didn't change their behavior all that much in the wake of Me Too, but the other 90% of guys kind of withdrew altogether and maybe said, okay, well, I'm just going to use the apps now, because at least in that sense, like if you're a match, at least there's some sense of mutual attraction. And so, yeah, it ended up having like this effect of not really stopping the predators, but inhibiting normal guys.
I also I think that the place where the Me Too stuff tends to actually happen, I don't think has necessarily shifted so much. I mean, maybe it actually has. I don't know, but it's like hookup culture. It's like when you don't know someone super well, especially if you're intoxicated or you're both intoxicated and you're having a sexual interaction. That to me it's always struck me as a place where the capacity for somebody to feel hurt or for miscommunications to happen is just super, super high. And I think about college students who are like children and they're drunk or high or both, and they're having a sexual interaction with somebody that they don't know. And the capacity for that to leave someone feeling hurt just seems very, very high. And there's these, but culturally, we don't want to stop that. Like people want to keep doing that, but they want to like protect against hurt. So they come up with these like codes that you have to get explicit verbal consent at every step of the process. Like, can I kiss your neck? Can I touch your left breast? And and this kind of thing to kind of make sure that everybody's on the same, which are not practical. They're not workable. But I think that there's this, to me, that's the actual danger zone. But I don't think that we've actually done anything about that. Or maybe colleges have, I don't know what, maybe they've changed, but like that's where people get accused of stuff, and that's where I think real reputational damage does happen. But people don't seem to have switched there, as far as I can tell.
I mean, yeah, I guess, and I mean the argument or the response I think would be, if you consume a lot of this content, it's that nobody's having sex anymore anyway. And porn is more appealing than an actual person. And just, getting back to the Manosphere thing, I mean, one thing that has always struck me about this, and I have to say, I follow a lot of Manosphere content. I'm fascinated with this topic. It's all over my algorithm now. It has completely polluted my brain. Like, I just, a kind of anthropological interest, unfortunately, has like mushroomed into like utter brain rot on my feeds, and I can't stop it. But I also can't look away. It seems pretty clear that a lot of these guys and a lot of their acolytes have this idea that all women now are monetizing their sexuality. They're all on OnlyFans. They're all like stripping or doing porn, and they don't really want to have relationships, and they are manipulating these guys, and that if they are young, they have a massive amount of power because they are young and sexually attractive and viable. And therefore, a young woman has much more power than a young man. And that's why these guys have to be sort of trained to either control them or avoid them entirely in favor of something else. And it's so distorted. Like, they don't seem to understand that actual real people, men and women, exist in the world in an offline kind of way.
Yeah.
So I wonder what you think about that, Rob, because I know that this is like very much in your lane.
Yeah, well, I think that, well, I mean, there's an interesting contradiction, I think, in the Manosphere, where one of their famous slogans, the ideas, is that women are born with this innate inherent value, and men are born with nothing, so you have to earn the value.
Right.
And so, okay, women are inherently important and have this value, and yet they're telling their followers that, and then they say, well, but then you should also mistreat women. Like, okay, well, do women have innate value or not? If they have this innate value, why are you telling men that they should mistreat them or ignore them or manipulate them? And then they say, well, the men have no value, and then how do you get value? Money and sex and status, and you get those things by signing up for my online course and my workshop and join. I think Andrew Tate has his, like, what does he call it, the war room or something, where he charges some insane fee to like be a part of his inner circle. And I don't know, they do like retreats or something, or maybe they used to, I don't know what they do now. and all the like hidden freemium content or whatever on their social media pages. And to me, a lot of it just seems like a money grab. But there's the reason why I think it resonates is there is a grain of truth in it. Like there's that scene in Inside the Manosphere, the Thoreau doc, where Justin Waller says something like, if you're an attractive 20-year-old girl, a rich guy will like invite you onto their yacht. And then he points to his two, so they run into a couple of his fans on the street. These two kind of, whatever, unimpressive looking guys who are huge fans of Justin Waller, and he points at these two guys, and it's like this unintentionally funny moment where he's like, no one's going to be flying these two guys out anywhere, no one's going to be taking these two on a yacht, and then the camera like zooms in on them, and they're like kind of nodding and like agreeing with their own momentary humiliation. They're like, yeah, no one's gonna hang out with us. But he's right. Like, Justin Waller is correct, and then his the solution here is if you want to be a high value male, you got to make money and be successful, and then later then the women will come to you. But a lot of this, I think, is a lot of these Manosphere guys strike me as late bloomers. And so they were not getting laid when they were in high school or in college or throughout their 20s. And then in their mind, they think like that's the typical guy. And so they advise their followers, oh, in your teens and 20s, don't worry about women, just make money and become successful. And then when you're an alpha male in your 30s, then, some hot 19-year-old will be attracted to you. But that's actually not the case. If you look at the data on relationship formation, a 19-year-old girl is probably going to date like a 22-year-old guy. She's in college. She's going to date, someone who's a couple of years older than her. The average attractive girl in her teens and 20s, they're not looking for some like 38-year-old influencer guy or something. They're looking for someone who's a little bit older, a little bit, more successful or whatever. But these Manosphere guys just have a completely warped view of like what's happening in normal relationships, because they themselves have never really had a normal relationship.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting about the data issue, because I do think there's something, and maybe it's not the 19-year-olds, but like, but like a 25-year-old will date a guy in his late 30s, early 40s.
Or 50s.
And there is something about when you're a man, and especially right out of college or something, where you are so much on the bottom of the totem pole, and you have no money, no status, you're immature, you're trying to figure your way in the world, and the women that are of your comparable level of attractiveness can like date a diplomat, and you're like struggling to get a fast food job or whatever you're doing, and like it does seem like there's something hard. I think women maybe have just a different life cycle pattern of, there's a lot of pressure, I think, on women to be like, oh, you're young and very attractive now, so you got to nail down a husband and have kids like before you probably want to. And like, there is a different pressure on it. It's just like, but for men, there's something about that low status time period.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's the idea that women, get worse with age, and men get better. Women lose value with age, and men gain value, right?
Which has its own brutality to it.
But it is brutal. I mean, look, I always say Mother Nature is the ultimate misogynist. And look, when I was younger, I often dated older guys, not like way, way older, not 20 years older, but often 8, 10, sometimes 12 years older. And I'm sure, I didn't actually, they weren't rich. Now I kind of got it wrong because they were older, but they didn't necessarily have any money. But there was something that they offered. They had wisdom, or they could take me to some bookstore and show me what books to read, and like, oh, I want to introduce you to these films, like I'm going to take you to this Kurosawa film. Like, there's a romance in that.
Yes.
And it doesn't necessarily have to do with like yachts and expensive watches. It could just have to do with a sort of cultural body of knowledge, and I mean, it's very hard to resist, and it's actually it is valuable. I mean, you do learn things from those relationships. But I have to say, like, I reaped the advantages of that when I was younger, and now that I'm on the other side of that, I can see, like, I'm in my 50s, right? So I see men who are my age, and they're single or they're divorced or something, and these women in their 30s and sometimes younger, I have to say, are willing to date them. And it's, I could judge it. I do judge it, but I also totally get it. So I think that's just one of those, brutal truths. It's a red
on
pill.
this point, there are angry young men online, and you'll see this in the comments section of these guys, probably in their teens, maybe their early 20s. So it used to be like the age gap thing in the Manosphere. It was like, oh, it's older women who are mad about the age gaps because like they can't compete with the young hot women, whatever. There's a reversal of this too among angry young men who get mad when they see women their own age dating older guys, where they're like,
sure.
like I don't know. Did we ever establish if we could swear on this podcast? But they're like, F these old guys. Like who is this old man? Like F him. I hate him. Whatever. Because he's like a 40-something-year-old guy dating some hot 20-something-year-old, and then like the guy online who's like, if he wasn't so rich and whatever, then she would be dating me instead. And so there is that, like the age gap discourse, the anger around it is like, young guys and older women.
Well, there's something interesting. There's something really interesting about our, like, we understand as a culture, I think we're kind of like, have come to terms with a lot of male sexuality is super superficial. And it's based on physical appearance. It's like TNA, and there is something like very shallow about it. I do think the interpersonal emotional connection is more important to men than maybe a lot of men and women even acknowledge to themselves. But like, there is a very superficial component that's a big part of it. I think we don't have the same type of grasp on female sexuality and what women are attracted to. And it's almost like we want to, like, I think maybe both men and women are like attracted to this fantasy that female desire is like pure or something, or it's this mysterious pure thing that's about love and mystery, and it's more personal, but it's like women are attracted often to status, and the idea that somebody who feels older or stronger or higher status or more money or smarter or more competent or whatever, or stronger or taller or whatever it is, those things are attractive to women, and they are also fairly superficial. And I think that there's something about, I think as a young man, when you start to see like, oh, there's this woman who seems really sweet and I have a crush on her, but she's interested in this jock asshole who is higher status but cruel, or he's richer but not nice, and she's attracted to him. And there's something kind of devastating as men understand that and start to realize like, hey, I'm a nice guy, how come they don't like me? If their sexuality were just about niceness, which it's clearly not,
right,
then it's like, and so I think, but we're uncomfortable just like acknowledging like brass tacks, there's these superficial elements to female desire also.
I think it's worth, like giving the devil his due. Like part of the why young guys are drawn to the Manosphere, like some of the advice they give, it's advice you don't really hear anywhere else, and some of it is directionally accurate. So like one of the things they'll say is that women are basically like trained their whole lives to like kind of be aware of what men are really like. Men only want one thing, and you got to be careful with guys and blah, blah, blah. And so women are kind of like, once they hit puberty, you have like this ambient awareness that guys are a certain way and you should be careful. And men are not really told the full, complete truth of what women can be like. And so you grow up thinking, oh, women are, like you said, Andrew, like, oh, Disney princesses who only want love and pure happiness, and they're so innocent. And then you kind of enter middle school or high school or whatever, people start dating, and you see the kind of guys that women are drawn to, and it's not like the super nice, altruistic, compassionate, empathic guy. Often it's like, the jock asshole or whatever. And then this, like, if you're not prepared for that and you're a naive 14-year-old boy or something, this, like, suddenly you can go into like a very dark direction of like, I've been lied to about women my whole life. What else have I been lied to about? Oh, well, now I've been lied to about, now there's a whole matrix that I need to see through.
Exactly.
So let me, like, the influencers will tell me the truth.
Now chemtrails are a thing.
Yeah.
Goes out from there.
Well, there's also something, I think there's another element that we often don't talk about is that a lot of heteronormative gender dynamics involve a dominant submissive dynamic. And I think we're also really uncomfortable with this in a way like that the male sexually, the male is often in a more dominant role and the woman is in a more submissive role as the most common pattern of human sexual interactions. And I think like this is something else where if it's not framed in the right way, especially young men are going to interpret this as like the way that some of the manosphere people do, that this is like, you know, that's more objectifying to women. Or I think they struggle to kind of say like when you're in like a committed relationship where there's trust and something, and then sexually there's these dominant submissive overtones, and the way that doesn't just apply to every other context, and that there's, you know, I think being able to integrate those dominant submissive elements with like in a healthy way is hard for people.
Can you say more about that actually, Andrew? Because are you
Yeah.
talking about like actually like within this sexual activity, or are you talking about like the man is going to want to initiate sex more, or like he's even going to initiate it, like asking somebody
I'm
out on
talking
a date initially?
Yeah,
Like
I would
what do
say
you mean?
even like plain vanilla, not kink, not something weird, that the male is usually more active and more dominant in the sexual interaction. And you're looking skeptical.
I don't know about that. I mean,
Okay.
it goes back and forth. I think, but there's certainly like a scenario where the woman is being
Yeah.
very aggressive, or
For sure.
I don't know.
I think that does happen. I don't know how I think that the other is much more common. But then it's just people have to, it's another thing for young men to make sense of and to think about. This doesn't mean that a relationship isn't equitable. It doesn't mean that there isn't romance or love. It doesn't mean, you know, whatever other elements are there. And I think there are ways that men are sometimes are very inhibited and shy about their desire to be dominant, even when women might want that. And sometimes they overdo it in an unsensitive way. And so I just think it's another challenging dynamic that men and women have to figure out how to navigate.
I think women can be really aggressive sexually. I hear a lot of dating stories, especially from men who are a little bit older, who are dating, I don't know, maybe millennial or younger women, that the women are often very like eager to kind of jump into bed. I've heard a lot of stories like kind of men internet dating or whatever, and like the woman is very aggressive and like, you know, really wants to jump in the sack like pretty quickly, and they're often a little bit befuddled by this. So I don't know. Maybe this is just the people I know.
I mean, I don't know that it necessarily means that women. I'm not trying to imply that women can't initiate sex or don't initiate sex, but I'm thinking more like when they're having sex or what the roles are that they follow into. Male dominance, female submission is normative.
Oh, are you talking about like people like, you know, getting out the accoutrements or something? Is
No,
this a kind
not
of? Are you
necessarily.
talking about choking? Is that where this is going?
Choking would be an example of
Okay.
something that is like a dominant submissive dynamic, but
Well, to Megan's point on choking, though, you do see that that often women report wanting to be choked more
Right.
than men
Yeah.
want to do the choking. Like the
Yeah.
demand for choking exceeds the supply of chokers.
Yeah, we got to do
and
something
so-
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I hear that
we're
all
the
the
economists
time
on this.
from
Yeah,
men.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I think younger women in particular, and yeah, there have been some interesting kind of essays about this from women about like what's going on here, and some have speculated that, you know, like as sort of broader society has become more egalitarian, like women want more sort of gender roles in the bedroom, and this is like one very like explicit, overt display of sort of dominant masculinity and submissive femininity that you can't really get anywhere else, and so it takes sort of these extreme forms in the bedroom.
There's a movie I really wanted to talk about actually, and I don't know if either of you have ever seen Pedro Almodovar's movie Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down.
Yeah, sure.
But okay, I love that movie. But isn't that's kind of that's a dominant submissive, like basically Antonio Banderas kidnaps an actress until
Yeah.
she falls in love with him and marries him.
Right, but I mean that's an
Bride
Almodovar film.
capture.
It has a cartoonish, it has a very sort of exaggerated.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, that movie was from the 1990s, I think.
Right.
Yeah,
And it's kind of
I mean,
romantic.
obviously, there's there's all this. This is a trope, but I mean, yeah. Just getting back to Rob's point, I cannot tell you the number of men that I have heard say, "Oh yeah, this woman wanted me to choke her, and like I didn't even know what to do." Like I don't like, because I have to say, as a Gen Xer, this was not on the menu. This was just unheard of, and it feels to me like very propped up. Like it just feels fake. It just feels like something that people are doing because they think that they are supposed to enjoy it, and it doesn't. It feels very performative. But that's just my
So
impression.
the women don't actually desire it?
I don't know what I think that they think it's like, I mean, it comes from porn. It's like people see porn and they see this happening there and they think, oh, I'm supposed to want this. And this is just sort of like part of the repertoire, like the sort of sexual repertoire. And I don't, I mean, whatever pleasure is to be derived from that, it's like, I think it takes like a pretty sophisticated level of technique. Like it's just not the kind of thing that you want to do like on a first or second or third date. I don't know. I mean, I know I'm sounding like a very naive Gen Xer here, but I just don't. This is a new development, all right? We never, ever, ever had this, okay? Until like 15 years ago or whatever.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, people have said that. It's also, Rob, you might know this, but my sense is that actual good data on a variety of sexual practices is not nearly as robust as it could be. That like, it's not like we had like really strong national surveys of sexual practices going back decades to track how it may or may not have shifted over time. Like my sense is that sex research is actually like a thinner area of research than one might expect. But would you have a sense of that, Robin?
I mean, there's some pretty good data on like number of sexual partners. That's like a very clean, easy way to a straightforward question of how many partners have you had in your lifetime, how many partners have you had within the last 12 months. But then, yeah, with something like choking, like it's a pretty recent fad, I guess. And yeah, we don't know, or is it? Because we don't know how far back.
I mean,
it's not
was
like
it more...
researchers were asking in the 70s.
Yeah.
Are you choking your partner? So it's harder to.
I would really like to talk to somebody who knows about that. Like, did it come from possibly like gay male sexual culture? Like, is it kind of like did it come from kind of BDSM sort of thing? Or
I know one instance of choking being described in older generations, and there was an R. Crumb comic about his sexual development, and he talked about when he started having sex, women asking to be choked, and that he enjoyed choking them.
Really?
That was in one of
that would have been in the probably. Well, he was that would have been 60s, 70s.
60s or 70s, but he was a very famously
our
promiscuous.
Crumb is not the
a
the
standard
beacon
person
of heteronormative
right.
sensibility. But I mean my impression was that it was like a masturbation thing. I mean, you would hear these stories of like, people accidentally autoerotically asphyxiating themselves and dying.
Yeah.
And that was like the most embarrassing way to go. I mean, there were several. I think the guy from In Excess, the singer from, is it Michael Hutchins?
I don't remember his name.
It was one of those guys. Yeah, I mean, there were some high-profile cases of men being found having hung themselves because the idea is that you get this incredible rush if you can kind of cut off oxygen while having an orgasm. But like I said, that's where that comes from. But that is a very advanced level, and you don't want to try that with somebody you just went on a Tinder date with.
That's why I think so much of this is so confusing. Like, I mean, it's like, and I especially think like, I mean, it's a different thing for like an adult than it is for like young men trying to make sense of a world where they have a girlfriend who wants this, and then they're hooking up with somebody else and might think they want it. And it's just so easy to see, like, I think this is a big part of where the Me Too stuff comes from, is like we have this kind of simultaneously super promiscuous culture or a side of our culture that's very promiscuous, and into this like all this kinky stuff, and then you have immature, intoxicated young people trying to navigate this in their relationships, and it just seems super likely that their disturbing, upsetting things happen a lot. I mean, it's just like and Me Too is probably a not effective method for addressing it, but it just not entirely effective.
It's porn. We just don't. It's internet porn. I mean,
it's a weird thing,
can't
right? Because
emphasize this
porn
enough.
is...
We did not have this in my day. We did not have this. We had normal sex.
And there's something like, I'm going back to like the way that young men feel. Like if your sexuality is entirely about watching porn, every time you watch porn, you're basically being cucked. You're watching the woman that you desire have sex with somebody else, some other asshole, and you're in the corner masturbating. And that's
you're training
every
yourself
time. Every
to
time
develop
you
a
do
cuckold fetish.
you're becoming that. And it's like the idea that you don't have feelings about that's like, it's not a great thing to feel. And I think those feelings are repressed, but then they come out sideways through maybe Manosphere stuff or something.
A while back, I saw the comedian Mark Maron stand-up show, and he said that he had issues with porn, and that he knew that he had a problem when one evening he brought a woman home and she got undressed, and then he's like, and it's a joke, but like it gets at something where he's like, he's sitting there and he's thinking, okay, so where's the guy? You know, I'm supposed to be the one now to perform, okay. And he had trained himself to become aroused and associate sex with someone else doing the work, and you just sitting there. And porn, it's like if young people are learning about sex from porn, and porn itself is already performative, right? It's a fake act of two people who don't really care about each other, and they know that there's a camera in the room, so they're performing for an audience. And so if you're imitating porn, you're imitating an imitation. So you're already kind of 2 degrees removed from what real sex is supposed to be. And yeah, I mean, there's good data on this too, of very high percentage of young boys obviously watching porn, but even among young women, something like 30% of them report watching porn on at least a weekly basis. Which is pretty shocking. But then also, like, what kind of porn are they watching? I'm sure it's different from the kind of stuff that men are watching. But
vampire porn.
It is a shift.
Romantasy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, romantasy.
Or like weird like elves. Yeah. Well, speaking of Mark Maron, did you ever watch his show at like I think it was on Netflix, Maron? It was kind of like it was very funny. I really liked it a lot. It was based on his life. There was this whole storyline where he gets involved with this much younger woman who was like his fan. I mean, and I think her name was Jessica, or maybe I can't, in real life, either Jennifer or Jessica, because this was based on a real person. And she's much younger, and she's very, very sexually aggressive. And the whole kind of joke is that, he's this middle-aged guy, and he's completely like taken by surprise by this, and finds it sort of difficult to keep up. And I remember there was this one scene, I think, when they first get together, and she's very aggressive, and she's like, well, what do you like? What are you into? What can I do? What do you you want me to tie you up, or what do you want me to do? And she's like, what kind of sex do you like? And he goes, I don't know, regular. And it was just, yes, like that is, nobody wants that. Like, it just feels so, it's a simulacrum or something. And it just doesn't feel real to me.
I also think, like, maybe as a society, like, we haven't figured out a good way to have guardrails around porn that I think even people who look at porn often want. It's so accessible, and there's not really I don't think there are really great interventions for people who are like, look, I wanna consume less porn. Maybe it's an addiction, maybe it's not. What do they do? And there are like various like screen blocking apps and things that people can get. I don't think they're so effective because you can usually just bypass them on your own. But like people, it would be if they had to go to the video store to rent a video, that extra effort and the extra social interaction would make it a lot easier for people to stop. But it's like quitting smoking, but there's like infinite free cigarettes in your home. It's just going to be like the first thing you do when you're quitting smoking is throw away your cigarettes. Like that's the first thing you do. So it's like it's very I think that it might be worth us as a society to say like that there are better ways, better methods for people to actually opt out or make it harder to access that we haven't developed, because it strikes us as like puritanical or something, and it doesn't need to. It can just be like an easier way for people to make it harder and harder for their kids to access. They probably are still going to see it somewhere, but it's not going to be in their room or on their phone 24/7. And we just haven't developed that stuff. I think it's it's a problem.
Yeah.
I remember it was at one point in the Manosphere documentary, it might have been Harrison Sullivan, HS, where he said, yeah, like I don't watch porn. I think it's disgusting. You shouldn't do that to yourself. And then, at the same time, he's profiting off of advertising OnlyFans content creators to his fans. But I think there's like this growing awareness, like the no fap movement among young guys. No fap meaning like fap as a colloquial term for masturbation, trying to get young guys.
I thought you said
fap,
no
yeah,
fat.
FAP.
Sorry, not
no
fat.
fat.
Not fat. Okay, fat.
Well, I guess that too, but yeah, no fap.
Okay.
Just stop looking at porn, like, and there's something to this that if you're a young guy and you are satisfying yourself, you don't have all of the motivational energy to approach a girl. You need to be like extremely desperate to overcome the fear of rejection. And there's an analogy here to like hunger, where if you can very easily satisfy your hunger by tapping a couple of buttons for Uber Eats, then you're not going to feel motivated to go out and learn how to cook and gather ingredients and do all of the hard stuff to make a meal for yourself. And same with porn versus sex. That I think porn is a huge sort of under-discussed factor in the sex recession, that young guys just don't feel desperate enough to go out and risk rejection repeatedly. I'm sure like we talked about Me Too and the sort of the cultural pattern there, but then also I think just the technological problem of porn, of young guys just depleting themselves in silence.
I bet if we could actually get a good intervention developed, where maybe it's a third party, people would have to opt in to a study where a third party on their devices blocks, has very harsh limits on social media and pornography. And we do this for 6-month trial or whatever, or 3-month trial, and you see how does their life change over this period. And I bet mood improves. I bet more social relationships. I bet physical health improves. I think that you should just get all of these potential benefits, but we'd actually have to have a strong like intervention and like a good study on this. I think it would be an incredibly powerful mental health intervention.
Yeah, I don't know of any like formal academic studies, but there are these it's like impossible to verify the veracity. But if you look at like Reddit, like the NoFap forums and stuff, you do see these anecdotal reports of guys who, and I think it's very encouraging. These guys are like trying to encourage each other to just give up porn altogether, and they report like their daily log, day 1, whatever, day 7, day 20, and they report how they are starting to feel better. I mean, there are kind of ups and downs in terms of mood swings, because they are kind of giving up this addiction. But for the most part, from what I've seen, like most of the time, these guys feel better if they manage to succeed in this goal of giving up porn. And they say like their interactions with women have improved, and they just generally feel more social. And because it's not just like it drains you of wanting to talk to the opposite sex, but like if you're spending hours a day that's just time you could have spent doing something else, anything else, and often that's hanging out with friends and socializing and developing hobbies or something. And so they're getting whatever it is, like 10 hours of their week back to do other things, and of course their life is going to improve.
And they are they depending entirely on willpower to do that, or do they have, because it's like that's a huge, there's some indication that you have I'm sure you've seen this research, Rob, that there's like you have a limited amount of willpower, that you can kind of like allocate. I mean, there's some
Yeah.
people who say this, and then like you can allocate it to certain things, but to daily resist porn and social media through sheer willpower alone, I would think would tap out a lot of willpower for some people on its own.
They have like yeah, you mentioned like there are these apps that can block from your phone, or they like have all of these sort of technological workarounds, or they lock their phone up during certain hours. Try to be in public spaces as much as possible. So you're kind of, it's a self-binding mechanism where, if you're around people in some capacity, you obviously can't just break out the laptop or your phone. And so, I see them all these kinds of strategies to avoid the temptation, or I guess like not be confronted with it in the first place, which is like, that's usually how it works. Like actually exerting self-control, is very difficult for most people, and the best way is to just never be tempted in the first place. And so, if you can't even access it on your devices, and if you're in a public setting, then there's very limited recourse to relapse.
I'm surprised I'm surprised there must be therapists who are like, it's a few sessions, or you do a session a month, and then we monitor the app so that you can't override it on your devices. And I bet it works for treatment of a lot of things.
There's got to be coaches. It's got to be a whole coaching space.
Yeah, that's right. You probably
Wow. Well, I mean, we need to wrap up pretty soon, but I mean, in terms of this documentary, Inside the Manosphere, are you yay or nay? How much did you guys like it overall?
I found it like it was entertaining. It did its job. It probably introduced this manosphere to a lot of people that had never heard of it before in a way that I felt was pretty honest overall. I mean, I thought Louis Theroux did a good job of. He tried to be fair. I mean, he probably made them look better than maybe they could otherwise have, because these guys are they're not the nicest guys in the world, and he tried to be sympathetic. He mentioned their difficult childhoods, growing up without a father, and trying to find ways to make money and be successful without any good role models around. But one thing I found interesting was that it seemed like these guys are kind of the mirror image of progressive feminists, where these guys are saying, avoid relationships, work on your career, don't get entangled with anybody, the opposite sex, they're all just sort of manipulative, scheming liars. And that's, the manosphere is telling their followers that and peddling that. But then on the sort of the progressive feminist side, it's the same thing of like, the men are like this and you should avoid them. And if you get locked in a relationship, they're going to try to control you and tell you what you can and can't do. So just focus on yourself and your career and self-development. Right. And it's this very sort of individualistic philosophy.
Yeah, I think I felt like he did mention he was specifically talking to the most offensive people in the manosphere, and that's what the documentary was about. It wasn't really about all of the discussion of men's issues or concerns, even including balanced voices. So that is an editorial decision where it made his really different from Cassie J's, which was a more empathic portrayal of more intelligent, sympathetic voices in the space. And I do think that colored the documentary. So I don't think that I didn't get a sense that he was distorting the people that he's representing, but he wasn't presenting any of the sympathetic, more balanced or smarter arguments for people in the space.
Yeah, it did. I just think by definition, if you're going to have a one-parter, it was like an hour and a half, maybe less, it's going to lack the necessary nuance. I mean, I would love to have seen it as an 8-parter or even like a 10-parter. I just think there's so much here. I mean, there's so, we can get into like Jordan Peterson and like figures like that and what are their roles and there's a whole, if I'm recalling the Cassie J documentary, God, it's funny you brought that up because I haven't thought about it in years. There was a big men's rights component to that. I mean, I think she was talking about these guys who are like really invested in the men's rights movement, and those guys are like their own animal. I mean, they are very bitter and very harmed, and they often are dealing with like, bitter divorces and custody situations that have like done them a lot of damage. And so like that's a whole component, and that can get very ugly. But I mean, yeah, these things are complicated, and like it is. I think you're right. It's a lot of this stuff is directionally accurate. Like there's a kernel of truth here, and I think it's completely true that this is, in a way, it's like a mimetic version of not just the girl power stuff, but the super social justice, the queer stuff. And I mean, a lot of these girls, it's like, well, men are all terrible, don't waste your time with them. But then they kind of like become lesbians, or they're queer, or they date women, and then there's this like there's just like it's such a rich tapestry, which is why I find it so engaging and I follow this stuff so much. So I guess yeah.
I had a question for you, Megan, which was, what do you make of the women in this space? Because they weren't all the non-OnlyFans women, not that there were a ton, but I think it was like the person that I'm thinking of that I wrote down was Myron Gaines's, I think it was his chief of staff or something, was a woman, or his podcast producer.
The one who was sitting in the green room. Who
was talking to Louis, right? Yeah,
talking to Louis, got in trouble from Myron for talking to Louis, and but she's wasn't an OnlyFans girl, and yet was really into supporting one of the more toxic figures in this space. There are some women like that.
Yeah.
Who are they? What motivates? What are they about?
I think they think they're in kind of show business. I think they see it as a job. I mean, these are like the women who would work on the Howard Stern show or something. I mean, it's a job, and I think that they're just kind of seeing it for what it is. And I suspect that they would kind of like put themselves at some kind of remove, or like I'm not one of those girls, or like I'm seeing this from a distance. I mean, it's not necessarily it's kind of a cool girl thing. But I mean, I think even with the OnlyFans girls, I gotta say, the bikini girls that are surrounding these guys, I feel like it's transactional. Like they are getting something out of it. They want to be noticed. They are all influencers. I mean, these ridiculous women that show up on Myron Gaines's shows on these panels, like these really, like they get them they get like 10 women in these things, and they're really dumb, and they ask them questions and they make them look stupid. They're all trying to promote their own brands. They know what they're doing. They know what they're there for. They haven't been kidnapped and put in this room and made to
I'm
look
not going to
stupid.
promote my brand by like being humiliated.
No, you're not. But that's the calculus that they've made. I mean, this is unfortunately like part of the attention economy. It's kind of the bottom rung of it. But I think most of them have agency. Like I think that I don't feel sorry for them at all.
It's a weird like psychosexual component to this with those podcasts where you have these Manosphere guys who are humiliating these women in bikinis at their table and telling them, oh, you're just unkind insults. But then the reason why the women agree, my understanding is that like they're like the men who are watching will sign up for their OnlyFans, right? So the girls are getting something out of it. There's a financial incentive here. Where like, okay, I'll let this this guy yell at me and call me names or whatever, but this is going to be watched by 100,000 guys, and some percentage of those guys are going to become paid subscribers to my OnlyFans, and a lot of those guys probably get this weird arousal of watching me get humiliated, and this will lead them to like want to know more about me and want to see me without my clothes on or whatever. And so the whole thing just feels extremely icky. I like that line, like the bottom rung of the attention economy. That is what this is.
I mean, they're all getting something out of it. It's like these girls used to go on Howard Stern. I mean, that was a brilliant thing of Howard Stern, is that he would have strippers on the radio, right? I mean, it was hilarious because it was on the radio. Yeah. There were no cameras in there.
Yeah.
And so you'd be listening on the radio. I was a big Howard Stern fan, surprise, surprise, because I love radio, and he's actually a great interviewer.
It's another...
Yeah, but you would get like these people would come in, and I actually knew somebody who she was an actress. She was promoting she was sort of an artist, like she was promoting like a one-woman show she'd done or something, or a film or something. And she came in, she came in. She got interviewed by Howard Stern, and he got her to take her top off or something. But it was nobody saw it. It was on the radio. And so that was what was just kind of funny. But then, of course, then the cameras started coming in, and it turned into something different. But, if you can pick up increase your audience by going onto a major, radio show and taking your top off in front of the 10 people who happen to be in the studio, you win, right? So I think this is just kind of like extrapolating from that.
It also shows that like it makes me just think like how timeless some of this might be. Like it's just like the fact that this stuff was happening on Howard Stern is kind of the Myron Gaines of his era.
Well, but he was, but Howard Stern always made fun of himself. No, Howard Stern was like, I have a small penis. No woman wants me. No, he was always, he was pathetic. He was like a nebbishy, guy. And he always, he was married to his wife for a long time. No, Howard Stern's whole thing is like, he can't handle it. He has to be in a relationship. And and that was kind of the Adam Carolla thing too. Like the Man Show, it was cheeky. And obviously then Adam Carolla had come off of Loveline, the most brilliant radio show of all time with Dr. Drew, where they really answered questions in a very funny and sophisticated way. And I think that sensibility, we should have a whole conversation about Loveline, because I'm a Loveline scholar.
Yeah.
We
could probably get Drew on here too.
Oh, I know Drew.
He's
a friend of mine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm sure
that would be an amazing guest.
I've had Adam and Drew on many of my shows many times.
Maybe,
but
so maybe that's part of. I know we're wrapping up, but maybe that's part of what it was that in a mass media situation, there does need to be an outlet for this type of stuff, but we used to do it in a more palatable way. There were certain types of guardrails about what people could or couldn't say, wouldn't degenerate into the super toxic, hateful stuff. There'd be a kind of self-deprecating or tongue-in-cheek frame that would kind of allow us to be gratified by this stuff without like totally succumbing to the worst.
If somebody had called into Loveline in the 90s or the 2000s and asked about choking, they would have laughed their asses off. They would have been like, what? Like, and Adam would have had something hilarious to say about it. Drew would have been like, don't try this at home. Like, what are you trying to achieve here? It would have been very educational, and then also and they would have made fun of the caller, but in a way that was very just had a camaraderie to it, and it was truly educational. And that is the lane that I think we have lost. And it's a shame, I'm glad I was around for that.
Well, I feel like the other side of it is maybe this won't happen, but I kind of feel like it's just going to keep degenerating, and in 20 years we're going to be even more shocked by, can you believe I don't know what they're going to do. I keep thinking they're going to run out of shocking stuff and we're going to hit some type of end.
My AI keeps trying to choke me every night. I want more. I can't get it off my back. It's terrible. Yeah. Anyway. All right. Well, great conversation. Thank you both.
Yeah.
And anything we need to know about OTI? Any calls to action? Are we doing that?
Well, if you're looking for a therapist, we've got more every day. If you are a therapist, join. We have we're going to have a conference in the fall. That's for members, for therapists. But
you can't just show up to the
other people. If you're a supporter, you can show up, but you have to be some type of member, a supporting member, or a therapist member, or a student member.
I got conferences coming up too. So in a few weeks here, I'm going to start promoting my events. So buckle up, because that's going to take 80% of the show. So.
Okay.
But if there's anything either Rob, do you have anything to promote?
RobKHenderson.com. Check out my Substack.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? We had our first edition of our journals peer reviewed now. First peer reviewed journal on Substack, so they can check out those articles too on our Substack. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I'm teaching some writing workshops, if anyone wants to know, just quickly. I'm teaching a Zoom writing workshop for 8 weeks in June and July. And I'm also running a women's weekend writing workshop on a houseboat in Marin County in May. So you can go to my Substack to find out about that, how to apply for that. So we'll talk about choking. We're going to have a writing... Maybe an all Manosphere women's writing workshop. I'm going to start developing that. I'm going to start thinking
women
about that.
Writing about the Manosphere.
Oh my God. Actually, that would be like an anthology. 13 ways of looking at the Manosphere. Some kind of, I'd think about that. All right. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Until
All
next
right.
time. See you next time.
Thanks, Megan.